The auditorium was alive with cheers, the echo of proud parents clapping as graduates walked across the stage. Banners hung from the rafters, cameras flashed, and the air buzzed with the kind of electricity that only comes once in a lifetime. In the very back row sat Margaret, a quiet woman in her 50s with a neatly pressed dress and tired but glowing eyes. Her hands trembled as she clutched the graduation program, waiting for her son Daniel's name to be called. He had worked so hard for this day, and she had sacrificed more than anyone knew to get him there. Margaret wasn't from the wealthy side of town. She cleaned houses for a living, often working late into the night to put food on the table after Daniel's father left years ago. Many of the other parents in attendance came from money and privilege, their children groomed for success. But Daniel's achievements were forged from grit, sacrifice, and the unwavering love of his mother. To Margaret, this ceremony wasn't just another event, it was the finish line of every sleepless night and every quiet prayer. As she leaned forward, eyes searching for her son's face among the graduates in their gowns, 2 large security guards approached her row. At first, she thought they were just walking the aisles, but then one leaned down and whispered, "Ma'am, you'll need to come with us." Confused, Margaret blinked up at him. "Excuse me, I'm here for my son's graduation." The guard's tone hardened. "This section is reserved. You don't belong here. Please leave." Gasps came from the nearby parents. Some looked away uncomfortably, while others smirked as if enjoying the spectacle. Margaret's cheeks flushed with embarrassment. She held up her program, pointing to Daniel's name. "My son is graduating today. I've worked my whole life to see this moment. Please, let me stay." But the second guard shook his head. "Rules are rules. Move now, or we'll have to escort you out." His words sliced through her like knives. Margaret rose slowly, her knees trembling, clutching her purse as if it were her last anchor. The humiliation was unbearable, being treated like an intruder at her own child's achievement. Parents whispered, some pitying, some judgmental. She felt the sting of every stare, every unspoken thought that maybe she didn't belong among them. As she followed the guards toward the exit, tears blurred her vision, but she refused to let them fall. Daniel couldn't see her like this. What she didn't know was that Daniel had already noticed. From the stage, waiting for his turn to walk, he saw the commotion at the back. He recognized his mother's dress, saw the way she held her purse close to her chest. His stomach dropped. "They're kicking her out," he whispered, his voice tight with anger. His classmates turned to look, but it wasn't just Daniel who noticed. There were 6 men in the audience who had been keeping an eye on him all evening. 6 men who owed Margaret more than anyone else in the room. These men weren't ordinary guests. They were Daniel's brothers in arms, U.S. Navy SEALs who had served with him overseas before he returned home to finish his degree. They had faced fire, darkness, and death together, and through it all, Margaret's letters and care packages had reached every one of them, even those she had never met. To them, Margaret wasn't just Daniel's mother. She was, Mom, to the whole unit, a symbol of love and strength that carried them through the darkest nights. As Margaret was led down the aisle, one of the SEALs, a tall man with a scar running down his cheek, stood up. The room fell silent as he moved into the aisle, blocking the guard's path. His voice was calm but carried the weight of authority forged in battle. "Where do you think you're taking her?" The guards stiffened, unaccustomed to being challenged. "This woman doesn't belong here," one stammered. The SEAL's eyes narrowed, his jaw tight. "She belongs more than anyone in this room." The other 5 SEALs rose in unison, their presence commanding, their movements sharp and precise. Together, they surrounded Margaret like a shield, their bodies a wall between her and the guards. Gasps rippled through the auditorium as whispers spread, Navy SEALs, real warriors, standing in formation at a graduation ceremony. The guards suddenly seemed very small, their authority crumbling under the weight of men who had faced enemies far more dangerous than them. Margaret looked around in disbelief, her lips parting as she recognized the men from photographs Daniel had shown her. She had written to them during deployments, prayed for them when she prayed for her son, sent cookies and letters into the desert half a world away. Now they were here, standing for her when no one else would. For the first time that evening, the tears broke free, not from shame, but from a surge of pride and relief. Her son wasn't just graduating with honors. He was graduating with brothers who would never let her stand alone. The guards hesitated, glancing nervously at each other. The taller one cleared his throat, trying to sound firm. "Sir, we were told this section is for donors and faculty families only." She but the scarred seal cut him off with a glare that froze him mid-sentence. She is family, and you're not laying another finger on her. His words carried so much weight, so much quiet menace, that even without raising his voice, the message was clear: this was no longer negotiable. The crowd shifted uneasily. Some of the wealthy parents whispered their disapproval, but others began to murmur in support. A woman in pearls leaned over to her husband and said, "She's his mother. What kind of monsters would throw her out?" The tide of the room was turning. Margaret, who just moments ago had felt invisible and unwanted, now stood at the center of something far larger than herself. She had been silenced, shamed, and dismissed, but she was about to be vindicated. Daniel, who had been fighting to stay in line on the stage, could no longer contain himself. As the announcer called his name, he marched across the platform with purposeful steps, not toward the dean or the diploma, but down the stairs and into the aisle. His classmates gasped as he strode past rows of stunned faculty, heading straight for his mother. His graduation robe flared behind him as he reached her, wrapping his arms around her shoulders. "You're not going anywhere, Mom," he said, his voice breaking. The auditorium erupted. Some stood and clapped, others cheered outright, and the 6 seals straightened their shoulders in quiet pride. The guards looked small and powerless, shrinking away as the dean himself hurried over, red-faced and stammering. I didn't authorize this," he insisted quickly, glaring at the guards. "This woman is the guest of honor tonight. She's the reason that young man is here." But the damage had already been done. The community had seen everything, and they knew exactly who had acted with dignity, and who had not. Daniel took his diploma from the dean, then returned not to the line of graduates, but to his mother's side. He pressed the rolled paper into her hands. "This isn't mine, Mom. It's ours. You earned it with me." Margaret sobbed openly now, clutching him tightly, while the audience gave a standing ovation. The 6 seals saluted her in unison, a gesture that carried more honor than any award or ceremony ever could. After the ceremony, the story spread like wildfire. Parents who had once looked down on Margaret now approached her with respect. Reporters picked up the scene, writing about the woman who had been shamed at her son's graduation only to be defended by Navy SEALs. Overnight, she became a symbol of resilience, of quiet sacrifice rewarded with thunderous recognition. The humiliation she had feared turned into a triumph no one could take from her. The guards, embarrassed and scolded, never dared look her in the eye again. The administration scrambled to repair the public image of the school, but for Margaret, none of that mattered. What mattered was the way her son had stood for her, and the way his brothers had shown up when she needed them most. She hadn't been alone, not then, not ever. Every sacrifice she had made had been worth it for this moment. That night, as the family gathered in the kitchen, the seals joined them around a small wooden table. They laughed, they ate, they shared stories of Daniel's courage and Margaret's letters that had kept them sane overseas. One of them raised his glass and said, "You'll never understand how much you mean to us, Mom. Tonight wasn't about defending you, it was about honoring you." Margaret wiped her eyes again, overwhelmed by the weight of love in the room. In the weeks that followed, she carried herself differently. No longer the woman who blended into the background, Margaret walked with her head high. She had faced humiliation and walked through it with grace, and when the world tried to push her down, her family, by blood and by bond, rose up to carry her higher than she had ever dreamed. For once in her life, she wasn't overlooked. She was celebrated. Moral of the story: true worth isn't measured by money, titles, or seats of privilege. It's measured by love, sacrifice, and the respect you earn from those whose lives you touch. Never underestimate the quiet strength of a simple person, because when the time comes, that strength can inspire an army.